So, what you'll notice on your little scavenger hunts is that based on how you answered the questions 1 through 11, you should have been able to get a little message on the back. So I'm just going to double check that you guys were able to do that, those of you who were here. So as it says on the back, what was the message, Meadow?
Underclassmen have 11 days left before.
Yes. Underclassmen have 11 days left before finals. Now, I said underclassmen because I use this also in the spring, and usually seniors have their exams earlier. And so when I change out the numbers for however many days, it still needs to say underclassmen. So that's kind of why it says it that way. But yes, we all have only that many days until we have to start preparing for finals and things like that. So we are running out of time here. So we're going to jump into this, and the simulation will take us to the end, and then your final will incorporate everything that we've covered in chapters 1 through 9 and this. Mostly the 1 through 9 will just be multiple choice, but then you'll have a little bit of a checking account piece there. So number 1, it says the back of a check that you receive has a section where you must blank the check so that it can be cashed or deposited into the proper account. What is the word there? Endorse. Okay, so there's actually 4 different types of endorsements, and that's each of those types is explained in your little workbook. And if you actually look at page 4, you'll see the 4 different types of endorsements. Okay, so there's the blank endorsement, the restrictive endorsement, another form of a restrictive endorsement, and then the endorsement in full. So those are the 4 types that you'll be using, and that doesn't matter to you a whole lot just yet unless you've had to endorse checks before, which maybe you have if you've gotten a check for a birthday or Christmas or something like that. But maybe you didn't realize there were multiple ways to endorse. And so when we go and actually start doing this simulation, you'll receive checks that you'll have to deposit into your checking account, and it'll tell you to endorse it in a certain way. So you'll need to know to go back to this page and endorse it properly. Okay, so just know that that's kind of where you'll find out about the different endorsements. But basically what an endorsement says is, hey, I am accepting this check, and here's what I'm going to do with it. And depending on the type of endorsement that you choose, that tells the bank what you choose to do with it. Okay. Number 2, a debit card looks like a credit card, but it is connected to your checking account. Okay, so the difference between a credit card and a debit card is that you cannot go into debt with a debit card. Okay, a credit card is debt. It's borrowing money for a time that you're going to pay back later. But a debit card is your actual money directly from your checking account. And so that's the difference. A lot of people get a little confused between the debit and credit cards. So debit is your actual money. Credit is borrowing for a time that you're going to pay back later, and oftentimes with interest, so at a higher rate. Number 3, checking accounts are great places to keep your money because they are what? What and what?
Safe and accessible.
Safe and accessible. Okay? Banks are expected to have certain insurance up to a certain amount of money for every dollar that you put in to the bank. So they are extremely safe. That wasn't the case prior to the stock market crash, but the stock market crash was something we learned from, and banks learned that there needed to be a way to maintain accounts and things along those lines, because while your money is sitting in the checking account, banks are using it to lend money to others at a higher rate, so they make some money back and also have your money there available when you need it. So they're doing business while your money's sitting there. And so that's something that you need to be aware of, but also realize that by letting the bank use your money, that's what they pay you interest for. So a lot of times banks will say, hey, if you have your money in here every month, we're going to give you 1% on your money. They're giving you kind of an incentive to keep your money in there and gain a little bit at the same time. Yeah.
Do you have to pay to keep your money?
There is a fee associated, but it's often less than the percentage earned. And the percentage earned does change. It just kind of depends on how good our economy is doing. Okay, so number 4, the other thing is that it's accessible. So the reason that it gets a low interest rate versus a really, really high interest rate on your money there is because you can go and get that money out of the bank anytime in a moment's notice. Awesome. It's a good thing we're recording on an iPad because it didn't go out. So anyways, the types of, which one are we on? The checking account. So it's safe and it's accessible. You can get a hold of it anytime you need to, and that's one of the many benefits of a checking account. Whereas an investment, your money is usually tied up for a certain amount of time. You might get more interest on it, but it's usually tied up. We like to call that liquid versus illiquid. So if something is really liquid, you can get to it quickly. If it's illiquid or a frozen asset, it's hard to get to. And so a checking account would be extremely liquid. You can go get it anytime. Number 4 is where we are. The type of endorsement that is used to transfer the check to another person or company. So which type of endorsement was that?
Endorsement in full.
Endorsement in full. And it's the only one that's 3 words, so that kind of makes it easy. Yeah.
Wait, so back on number 3,
Yeah.
What would be an example of like an account that you have at a bank that's not accessible?
Most bank accounts are pretty accessible. However, like certain savings accounts might be a little bit less accessible than a checking account because sometimes they'll say, hey, you got to keep it in here for this long, or you need to have this certain amount as your balance at all times. So there might be more restrictions. A CD, a certificate of deposit, which you can often get through a bank, usually requires that your money stay there and that you put a certain amount in for like a number of years in order for it to get a little bit higher of an interest rate. So those would be some examples. And some money market accounts and things like that that you can get through banks that have a higher interest rate, they usually have certain like restrictions where they'll say you have to use your debit card this many times in the month, or you need to do whatever to do this to get your interest, the rate that you want it to be.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So number 4, the type of endorsement is the endorsement in full. Number 5, blank is a form commonly used for recording bank activities. This would be your check register. And we're actually going to work on filling out the check register for the month of January in our simulation today. We're going to do it all together. And then this will be the only time we do it together because after that you kind of get to go at your own pace and work through each of the months. And there's 9 months in the cycle of the simulation. And so that sounds like a lot, but as you get into it, it doesn't take you as much time. This first day, it'll take us the full day to get through January. And that's just to do the check register. Tomorrow we'll intro how to do the reconciliation part. And then you'll get to get started on February. And then I kind of usually plan for about a month a day with a little bit of extra like, hey, why don't we catch up today here every once in a while. So, but once you get rolling with it and learn what you're doing, it really does go really quickly. Number 6, in the real world, there may be math errors, items that you have forgotten to include in your register, and possibly even items which are not yours. So the process of reconciliation or balancing your checkbook is very important. So reconciliation is a word there. And that word is a big, long word that really just means to make right. You look at your bank statement, you look at your record, which is the check register, and you make sure that they are both right. That's what reconciliation is.
So the check registers, that would be like if you wrote down everything that you purchased.
Yes, that would be a check register.
Okay, so we're learning how to do that.
We're going to learn how to do that. In the real world today, things are very digital, and people have gone to doing digital methods of that, and that's great. I have no problem with you guys choosing to use a digital method. I just want you to know what's happening when you're doing that digital method, so we're going to do it on paper so that at least that way you know the process that's taking place, even if you're doing it digitally. And hopefully it'll get you into the habit of realizing the importance of documenting your purchases and keeping track of them, even if you do it digitally. Number 7, if you make a mistake when writing a check, you should not correct it, but instead print the word void in large letters across it. Write another check and save the blank check for your records. What was that last blank there?
Voided?
The voided. So void and voided are your 2 words there. Number 8. The blank line on a check helps you to remember why you wrote the check. That would be the memo line. The memo line on a check, which we'll look at what a check looks like here in a little bit. We've got some in your simulation. A memo line is purely for you. You could leave it blank and the bank's not going to care one bit, or whoever is processing your check's not going to care. It's purely for you and for you to know why you wrote that check. So for instance, if you write it to Walmart, one time you might be going for groceries, the next time you might be buying Christmas presents. That way you know the difference between your purchases and things like that. So sometimes just writing down the place that you're writing it to is not enough to jog your memory. And that kind of helps sometimes with using that memo line. Number 9, a check is simply a piece of paper without your signature, which should look very similar to the signature card that you filled out at the bank when opening your account. So without a signature, your check really doesn't mean anything. But once you've signed it, it's now a legal document. Now, you guys are not 18 years old yet, and so no offense, but your signature really doesn't mean anything until you turn 18. But as soon as you do, that signature is really important, and when you sign things, it really matters, and so you need to understand that process. Now, banks will still usually accept checks that are signed by you all, but oftentimes they'll require a parent to also sign or something along those lines to prove its legalness. And a signature card, when you open up a checking account, they'll have you sign on a signature card so that way they can kind of double check to make sure that your signature matches. And so it'll come up digitally when you submit your check to the bank to get it cashed or whatever, or somebody else is cashing it. It'll show what the two signatures look like, and they should be close enough that the bank teller does not think that there's any problem with it, or that it's not accurate, or that there's any type of identity theft or anything like that going on. And they have been trained to kind of see some differences and things like that to be aware of. I, on occasion, have signed for my husband just because he's not been around or we've needed to take care of an issue. We've never encountered anything, but we also go to a small town bank where they know both of us, and so there's that too. So you have to be careful. At some point you might not live in a small town, and you need to be aware that these things are taken pretty seriously. Number 10, the digitized numbers on the bottom of a check represent the account number and the routing number, and you might have those switched, routing and account. But anyways, it's the routing and the account numbers. And what that tells us at the bottom of a check is where the origination of that check came from. So not only will it tell which district bank, that's the routing number. There's 12 district banks in the United States, and we actually have one up in Kansas City, a Federal Reserve Bank. There's 12 of them, and those are like the origination banks, and then all the little banks that you actually bank at will have your account. And so there's two numbers that they kind of have to bounce off of before the money comes out of your actual account.
Where do you buy checks at?
You can do them just online or actually through your bank. It just kind of depends. You want to make sure that you always do it though through a certified supplier.
So you don't have to buy it from a federal bank?
No, because basically a check is just a piece of paper. You can write a check out on a piece of toilet paper if you want it, as long as it's signed and the money's actually, and you write out your account number and all that, technically it's legal. It's just a piece of paper. It's just helpful if it's all notarized and all that fun jazz, so they don't have to go through that process of checking it. But technically, it's just a piece of paper. Number 11, the blank blank is the amount of the check is written out in words, whereas the blank blank is the amount written out in numbers. So the written out in words is known as the legal amount. The other one is known as the what? The written amount. So the legal amount is the one that you actually write out in words. So if the two numbers don't match, they're going to look at the one that's written out because that's the legal amount on a check. And then that last line, the legal amount wins. But it is likely that the bank will not accept the check. They'll probably just encourage you to write a new one. They'll void it or say, hey, we're going to stop payment on this, because usually if there's a discrepancy, it means that the check was probably messed with. Not always, but usually that's what it means. So on to the back, if you did all the little code work, you should have had underclassmen have 11 days left before final exams. Okay, so that's really what it should end up saying on the back if you do the code work appropriately. And I'll let you go back and do that later, but I just wanted to kind of go over those so that way we're not bypassing that, since today is the day to do that. So now what I would like for you to do, because this little scavenger hunt kind of helped you guys to work through the information piece, Now you're going to flip over your books. So you're looking at them this way. You're going to flip it over to the back side. There you go. See, it's like a double-sided book. And you're going to open the opening flap, and what you're going to see is the monthly transactions. And this is where it gets started, and now it's going to take me a second to get it loaded because of the power outage. So give me 1 second.
Can we turn on the lights too?
Do you need the lights to be able to see pretty well?
Yeah.
Let me get this on, and if you still can't see very well, I'll turn it on, but it might be hard for you to see the screen. So if you can see the screen still, because I'm going to write them as we go as well. But if it's hard to see, just let me know, and I'll fix it.
Thank you.
Yeah. We might even be able to do this while this is loading. It's taking a moment. June kind of has my little light over there. Maybe put this between you girls. That'll be a little bit more light for you to see.
Thank you. Everything's gone. So Google. Okay, so what you should be able to see before you is this page. And the first page over there on the left is kind of what's happening throughout the month. Okay? So each one, you'll notice, has a date, and then it tells you what happened during that month, and then it gives you some type of payment or something that was made, and you have to record it. So that's what you're seeing over here. So we're going to start with the month of January, because January is at the beginning of the year, and we're going to work our way down. And as we read the different items that took place, we're going to add them correctly to our check register. Okay? And in order for you guys to do this today, I'm going to walk through it with you step by step and fill in the check register appropriately. So I've got my little workbook up here. I'm looking at the side that has all the instructions on it, but I'm only going to show you the check register piece and fill it in, and you guys should fill it in as we go. Okay, so the very first thing it tells us at the beginning of the month is that on the 3rd of January, because it says 3 Jan, you opened a checking account by depositing your paycheck. So you have a job, you made some money, your paycheck is in the amount of $667.20 plus $50 more in cash. So maybe you got paid for mowing the lawn somewhere as well, and you got $50, and so now you've got this paycheck plus $50, and you're going to add this to your checking account. And you're going to endorse the check using an endorsement in full method. So down here, right here, it says endorse here. They're pretending like that's the back of your check that you received. You're going to endorse it in full. And if you're not sure what that looks like, go back to page 4 and look at the endorsement in full and figure out what it needs to look like, but sign with your name because this is your paycheck. We're pretending like this is you. Okay, so you're going to endorse the check, and then you're going to fill out what we like to call a checking account deposit ticket. When you go to the bank, if you take them a check, you should technically always fill out a deposit slip that tells how much you're depositing, and it should have your account number on it. So like in the
endorsement in full, will we put like first option bank and then
Yep.
under that our signature?
Yes. So you could put first option bank and then sign. Okay, and so then we're going to fill out our deposit slip. So what is the day that we're depositing this money? What is the date?
3rd of January.
Yeah, so you're going to write January 3rd, 2000, and we'll just say 19 because that's the current year we're in. So 2019, and then we're going to write in the amounts that we're submitting to them. So how much cash are we submitting to the bank? How much cash? $50. So right here, I'm going to write January 3rd, 2019. Right here, I'm going to write $50 of cash. And then right here, how much is my paycheck worth? $667 and 20 cents. So that's how I'm going to write that in there. And then again, we're doing it to first option bank. So I'm just going to write first option bank, and then I'm going to sign my name. Okay, and so I'm going to say $50 and $667.20. My total deposited is what this and this equal together. So what is my total deposited? It might help to have your iPad out and it serving as a calculator right now, because we're going to be doing a lot of calculations over the next couple of days. But there you are. It should be $717.20. Are we going to get any cash back? Only if the situation tells us. So does the situation tell us that we're getting any cash back today? No, it does not. So we're going to leave this blank or put a line through it, and then our total deposited is going to be $717.20. And this line right here, it says sign if, or sign on line above, only if cash is received. Are we getting any cash back? No. So do we need to sign? No. So the only if cash is received is very important. If you're ever wanting cash back, then you might sign that. So, if you were wanting cash back, maybe you wanted $20 back, you could write that in and then you would sign. All right, maybe you just wanted a little bit of cash to hang on to in case you needed to use it to buy something, so you wanted to do that, you could do that. But if you don't want to, if you just want it all to go into the bank, then you're good to go. Okay? And then that part is done right over here. So now we need to record the fact that we deposited that amount on our check register. So when we do that, we're going to go over here to our check register, and we're going to fill it out appropriately. And for every entry on our check register, we're going to use 2 lines. So you might notice that your lines kind of are white and green, white and green, white and green, white and green. So for every transaction, we're going to use the white and the green. All right, so for this first one, it says number. Well, there's not really a number. Normally it would refer to the check number that we're writing to spend money. But in this case, we're just going to put DEP for deposit. It's going to be our code that we use. What is the date? January 3rd, so we're going to write 1-3 for January 3rd.
Do we need a 2019 number?
Not really. Not for a check register because it's going to be so current. You're just going to keep it going.
So like the number.
Yeah. So if I were writing a check to buy something, whatever the number is on the check, that's what I would write there. But we're not going to do it for our deposited check because that can get confusing knowing if it was something I wrote or if it's something that somebody gave me. Does that make sense? So we're just going to put deposit so we know that that was it. And so on this line where it says description of transaction, we're going to write a little description about what's happening here. So we're going to put opening checking account. We might put paycheck on the second line, and we might write the amount there, $667.20, and cash, $50. Just so we know what is going on. Because over here, we're just gonna write the total amount we deposited. So we might be like, that's weird. One of my paychecks wasn't $717, so why in the world is my amount deposited that much? So this little note is kind of just helpful to know. Now we've got two lines here. We've got the line that says debits with a minus sign next to it, so it's anything that we're spending money on, money going out. And then we've got a line here that says credits with a plus sign next to it, so that's money that's coming in. So is this money leaving our account or coming into our account?
Coming in.
It's coming in. So we're going to write it under the plus sign, and just to kind of help you guys see what's going on up here, I'm going to use two different colors. If it's a plus, I'm going to use green. If it's a minus, I'm going to use red, just so you can kind of see really clearly what's happening here. But I'm going to write 717.20 because it's the total that we're adding to our account, and then I'm going to write this amount again over here. And this is really where the colors come in handy, because I want you to very clearly see. Now, for you guys, rather than changing colors, I would write a plus or a minus sign next to this amount so you know what's happening. All right, because the green line below it is where we're going to kind of keep a running total of what's in our account. So if we had nothing to start with, and we added 717.20 to our account, how much do we have left? 717.20. And I'm actually going to write that amount in blue, just so we can easily see the additions and the thing. And then my blue will be my running total. Okay? All right, so now we're ready to move on to transaction number 2. Not every single box is filled in. That's okay. It's filled in correctly. So let's move on to transaction number 2. Transaction number 2 is what day? What's the date for transaction number 2?
8th of January.
The 8th of January. And it says write check 101 for $35.24 to the National Electric Company for their bill that is dated January 3rd. So we know that we're writing this on 1/8. And what is our check number that we're writing? 101. So over here we're going to write 101. And we're writing it to the National Electric Company. And on the second line, if you want to put bill dated 1/3, it might be helpful for future reference, but it's not super necessary. And is this money going to be coming into our account or out of our account? Are we paying it or are we getting it?
Paying it.
We're paying it. So it's going to come in the minus column. And it's again how much? $35.24. So we're going to put this over here but with a minus sign. $35.24. And what is our new total? What is our new total? You can use a calculator. No shame in that. Should be 6.81 and 96 cents. So that should be our new total. Once everybody has that recorded, we're ready to move on to the next transaction. So January 9th, it says write a check 102 for $24 to Reader Services for a 12-month subscription. So we're going to go up here and we're going to put 1-9. Okay, and we're going to check number 102. And it's to Readers Services. And if you want to write a little note on the second line to yourself that it's a 12-month subscription, you can. Again, it's not required. Is this going into our account or out of our account? Out. So it's going in this column for $24. Again, a minus 24. I'll write it out over there and let's figure out what our new total is. Should be 6. in, and still 96 cents. And there's our new total. Now notice, we're gonna have a lot of transactions going out because often that's how life works. You get paid every so often, but in the meantime, between paychecks, you're spending a lot. And so that's what you're gonna see taking place in this activity, this simulation. All right, the next one, it says, you received your debit card in the mail. You activate it and memorize the PIN, record the PIN number in a secure location. So that happened on January 10th. Is any money exchanged? No. That means it does not need to get recorded in here. Now, should you probably, when you actually in real life receive a debit card, write down your PIN number somewhere? Yes. And maybe that's where you want to record it, just so you have it recorded. But there's probably other places you could put it to. Okay, so no money's exchanged. It doesn't go into our check register. So what's next? January 15th, you're going to use your debit card to pay $40 to Ticket Forum for concert tickets. So this code area, which is usually for check numbers, is basically going to be your code for any type of transaction you do. So anytime I use the debit card, I like to write DC to remind myself that I used the debit card. You can choose another method as long as you're consistent throughout. Okay, so we got this on 115, and it's going to Ticket Forum, and it's going to be for concert tickets, and the amount, is it going in or out of our account? Out, and it's $40, so we're going to write 40, again a minus 40, and I would put the minus in there just so you don't forget that you need to do your math to transition, because some people like to forget by accident. And we're going to reduce it to 617.96.
What's that little check column for in between the?
We're going to get to that in the reconciliation, but you don't need it until then. Okay. So at the end of the month, we go back and double check our bank statement, and that's when we use the check. All right, so January 15th, we also decided to pay our Verizon bill. So it is possible to have the same date, but different times. And it says that we're using check 103 to pay our Verizon bill. So we're going to type in Verizon, phone bill, and so we can put bill dated the 12th. That just tells us when it ended, the payment period. And again, this is money going out of our account. It's $41.80. So we're going to write in $41.80 minus $41.80. Some people think that this gets really repetitive and annoying, and it's true, it does. But the double writing helps you to make sure when you messed up and your total isn't right, to figure out where your mistake was a lot faster. So don't skip steps. You do need to write them out, and if you skip steps, I'm going to make you go back and redo it, so that would be worse anyways. So just go ahead and make sure you're doing all of the steps every time. Okay. On January 19th, it says you're going to use your debit card to pay $120.24 to Hilltop Garage for service to your car. So your car was having some issues. So you used your debit card, DC, on 119 Hilltop Garage. I don't know that you need to write anything on the second line unless you really want to. You could put service to car if you really would like. And again, this is money coming out of your account because the way life works, you get paid and then money comes out. 120.24 minus 120.24. I'm going to type it in just because I'd rather type it in and make sure I've got it right. Then skip steps. And so I should have 455.92.
What's like a healthy amount of money to have in your checking account?
That's a tough question to answer. It really depends on how many expenses you have. So you should know before the month ever begins how many expenses you have and how much money is coming in. And then after that, as long as you have enough to cover those, anything else is spending money, just don't go over. But you just need to make sure that you're being wise. Now, I do think that you need to always have an emergency fund set aside in a savings account. So just in case something arises that you don't expect, that's ready to go. And that, I think, should be at least $1,000. And then eventually grow it to be 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, should something terrible happen and you have to be out of work for a time. So January 22nd, it says that you use your debit card to pay Seasons Unlimited for clothing. So debit card, 122, Seasons Unlimited. You can write clothing on the second line. And the amount was $33.93 coming out of our account. $33.93 minus $33.93, and that leaves us with what? $421.99. And then our next one says on the 28th, we wrote a check 104 to KMT Insurance for our quarterly car payment. So if it's a quarterly car payment, how often is it going to be paid?
4 times?
4 times in your year. So we're paying it right now. We're not going to need to pay it again until April. So you might want to write a note to yourself, because when April rolls around, you're going to need to pay it, but it may not tell you. So quarter payment, next due in April. I would write that somewhere down there just as an extra reminder, so later when it comes up you don't forget. And the amount is $314.12. So again, minus $314.12, which leaves us with goodness, 87 and looks like 107. 107.87. And our account is starting to get low, but no worry, we're about to get paid. 107.87. All right, so it says on January 31st, you get your next paycheck and you're going to deposit it, but you're going to keep $60 in cash for personal spending. Okay, so this is significant because now we're going to actually keep some of our money, and we're going to fill out the deposit ticket in the correct manner. So what is the date that's going to go on the date line? I'm not going to flip back, because if I flip back, then I got all these numbers on the board and you're going to be like, what? So what is the amount that needs to go on our date line here? Or the date that needs to go on our date line here?
The 31st?
Yeah, January 31st. So go ahead and write January 31, 2019 right there. And then our check is for how much? Do you see the check there? We've got a little check on the side.
Oh yeah, that's $752.
$752.37. So next to the word checks, you need to write that amount, $752.37. So right here they tell us, oh, you already got it. Okay, awesome. And so how much money are we going to get back? $60. So under where it says total deposit, you can write the 757 again, but then when it says less cash received, we need to put $60 there and find out what the difference is. So how much are we actually depositing for our net deposit? And since we're getting cash back, what do we also need to do on that signature line? We need to sign. We also don't forget to endorse your check. It says to give it a blank endorsement, which is just signing. So just sign your name.
And then we need to make sure we write it in. So deposit, DEP, is the code we've chosen to use, 131. We're just gonna write deposit paycheck. You might wanna write kept $60 on the second line so you know why it's less. And then what's the amount actually being deposited here? We got the,
$692.37.
yep. $697.37. Actually, I think I looked that wrong. Sorry. $692.37. And is this being added or subtracted? Added. So just make sure we put it in the right area. $692.37. Plus sign 692.37. And what is our new total going to be? $824. That's our new total. We've got a couple more transactions down here. Actually, we just have one more, and then it tells us to go ahead and reconcile. So it says on January 31st, you wrote check 105 for $450 to Colonial Apartments for your February rent. Oftentimes, rent is paid a month in advance or before for that month before it. So we're finishing out January, we're paying for our February rent right now, and that's going to be on the 31st. So we're going to write check 105, 131. We're going to call it Colonial Apartments. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to write on the second line February rent. And again, the amount's coming out of our account, so it's $450 out of our account. I'm writing that on the wrong line. 450 minus 450, which means our new total should be $350.24. And the last thing down there at the bottom says reconcile your account statement for the month of January. And then it says tip, your checkbook balance should be $350.24 prior to deducting the $5 service charge. So is our current total $35.24 or $350.24? It is. And what do we probably need to do? Because it's hinting at us that we should do that. Go ahead and do the service charge. So again, SC would probably be a good little fee thing there. 131. We'll write bank service charge. You can write it now or you can write it later when you reconcile, but I think it makes more sense to do it right now since they're telling you. $5, it's going to be a minus, which means our new total is going to be $345.24. And assuming everything has been recorded and recorded accurately, that's going to be the amount we look for when we reconcile. So here's what I would like for you to do. Make sure that this first page, your two deposit slips are filled out correctly and that you've endorsed the checks the right way. On this second page, make sure you have your check register complete so that it matches mine. Your reconciliations down here at the bottom, we're going to do that first thing tomorrow. Okay? If you would like to take your book with you to finish up those things for homework, you may. If you'd like to leave it here in the third hour tray so it's there for you tomorrow, then you may do that as well. But that's where we're at with January so far. Any questions before we stop?